Okay everyone, so in the last lesson, we learned how to escape characters in PHP by using the backslash character. And in this lesson, I just want to talk about another topic, which is going to be the numbers in PHP. And in PHP, we normally have three main numeric types, and that will be the integer, the float, and the number strings. So let me just create here float.php, and let's have number.strings.php. So just have that in mind. These are the three most common or the three main numeric types in PHP. And it also has two more data types used for numbers, and that will be the infinity and the not a number data type. So let's first talk about the integer data type in this lesson. So I've already taken the rows for integers here. I pasted it here and I've created a multi-line, and these are some things that we have to know when we are working with integers in the PHP language. An integer must have at least one digit. An integer must not have a decimal point. An integer can either be positive or negative, and integers can be specified in decimal base 10, base 16 hexadecimal, octal base 8, or binary base 2 notations. So for an example, if we go and create here an echo statement, and you would see we don't do it. This is a number integer, and it's going to be different when we are working with number strings, because this is a number string. Technically this is still a number, but it's being read by the browser as a string data type because we enclose it inside of two double quotes. So if we try to go back to our browser and just refresh this and check, we have lesson 11 numbers, and this is 2020. We do see here 2020, and for readability purposes, let's type echo here line break, and we know that this is just producing the exact same output display. We have 20 and 20 here. However, if we try to go and utilize, let's say, what if I have a var dump is 20? What are we going to get? And how about var dump 20? What are we going to get here on the browser? Let's just see. So we can see this is an int value and this is a string value of 20. As we can see here, it's giving those information. And if I try to go have some line breaks here, just to have a bit of separation. Let's go back to our browser. Let me just scroll that down. And let's see. So we have an integer and a string with two characters, and that will be 20. So what is this parameter being passed in the string built-in function here? We can see these are like built-in functions if we because we have some function invocation operators, and it's saying that there are two values here. What if we go back to our browser just to explore a little bit? What if I say this is going to be 200? What are we going to get? Or what are we going to see being displayed? So we now have three characters. If I add another 0 and go back to the browser, that's just telling us that it's going to be 2000 here with the four characters here. How about if we add that in our var dump here? What are we going to get? So I think that's just going to be the integer value of the actual value of the number, full number, 2000. So just don't get confused with what we're seeing here being outputted. And if we are going to be doing a quick search, what is the var dump? And you would see this is, I'm calling this a function because we do have the open and close parenthesis, and it's a built-in function that is used for getting some information about a variable. We haven't yet talked about variables, but we are able to utilize this also to get the information about the data type that we're working with. So just have that in mind. If you want to read more about it, again, just do a quick Google search. Var dump is pretty useful, and it's not only available in PHP. If we try to search for var dump in JavaScript, we'll see some Stack Overflow discussion. We can try to go look into it and see that it's saying here console.log is similar, it has a similar functionality that sometimes we use that for checking out or doing some debugging. It's pretty useful in terms of JavaScript. So it's usually something that helps us to check what we are we getting, and if we are going to look for ways on how to check for data type, we usually get the type off sometimes in the console.log. So just have that in mind. I just wanted to at least give you some reading resources that you can try to look into. So var dump is dumping information about one or more variables, and it's a function. Okay, so I'll be leaving a link to some of this discussion. You might want to read them. So just take note, everybody. I just did some things here. I included lesson 11 here for the three numeric types: integer, float, and number strings. So just don't get confused. Again, I just added all of this. And if you already have background in HTML, you can further improve what we're trying to do here for the documentation of some features of the PHP language. Let me just Alt-Z this so that it will be a lot easier for you to follow along if ever you're trying to also build what we're trying to build here. So along the way, while we're learning the fundamentals, we're able to see it on an actual web application that we can try to further improve on our website. And going back here, I just want to show you here something that we can try to use the var dump function, and that will be for integers. We can say php int max, and we can also min. So this is going to be the largest integer supported and the smallest integer supported. Let's also just add some echo here. So we just want to echo some line breaks here, and if we go back to the browser, we should now be able to see the largest and the smallest integer supported in 64 bits systems. Now let's try to explore on float numbers. And when we say float numbers, this is going to be any number with a decimal point. So if I say 256.5, and then end that, let's have an echo for line break. Let's have some other numbers here. And again, I'm not using double quotes just to make sure that these are going to be displayed. Let's have a var dump for the number for dump 256.5, so that we can see how it will be displayed by the browser. So we have var dump for this, or I'm just going to copy this and then replace that with a var dump, and this one also. Then let's go back to the browser and see what we're going to get. Let me refresh and float. So we do see here we have a 256.5 float, and 20.548 is getting displayed as float. And we have this built-in function float. And similar with PHP integers, we can also say here var dump PHP underscore float max, and just to see what we're going to get, just to explore a little bit. And let's go back to our browser, refresh, and we do see here the float max and the float min values that we have here. Now, one thing that I just want to do here, what if we try to, let's say, if we try to have some sort of a multiplication here, let's echo 4 multiplied by 2.5. What are we going to get? So one of the operand is a float and a whole number. What are we going to get if we try to, we do get a value of 10. Let's see, let's have a, we're getting a value of 10. So if we try to var dump this, underscore dump 4 multiplied by 2.5, what are we going to get? So let me just go back to my browser and see. It's saying float 10. even though we're getting a whole number. So I think that's something that you have to take note of. One important thing to know is that even if we multiply this 4 multiplied by 2.5 and it's getting 10, output displayed is 10, the result is still stored as a float. The result here is still stored as a float because of one operand is a float, the 2.5 value. Okay, so just have that in mind. At least you'll know that if you multiply a whole number integer with a float number, even though we do get a float of 10 or a value of 10 being displayed, which is a whole number or it's like an integer, what we're getting here is actually a data type of a float number, okay, and not an integer. But if we try to remove this, what are we going to get if we remove the dot there? Just a little bit of exploration. You will see it's changing to int 8. It's integer with the value of 8. So 4 times 2 is equals to 8. Just have that in mind. I just wanted to show you that, or at least explore on what's currently happening with an integer and a whole number. An integer and a float number. What are we storing in our memory, in our computer memory, when we are working with numbers like this? Just try to take note, everybody. In PHP, we store a float number like in this way, but with C#, if you have a background with C#, 20.5 should be followed with the letter F. So I think that's worth mentioning in some people who are familiar with C#, or if you go learn C#, you might get confused. Why is it in PHP we don't need that F character? In C#, it's a required syntax for you to identify that the number that you are working with will be having a float value. Just have that in mind so that we can define a float in C#. There's that F value, and in PHP, we don't actually need that extra character F. Now, let's just try to go and work with number strings or numerical strings. So let's just say this is going to be numerical strings. And if you try to echo out, let's say I'm just going to say 10, echo out 10 here. What are we going to get? And let's have an echo BR. And let's see. Now, if we try to check on whether this is going to be numeric or not, let's have a var dump. Var dump 10. And let's have a var dump 10. What are we going to see? If we are going to use this, and let me just go back here, number string. So we do see that this is a string and this is an integer. And let me just go have an echo here and go back to the browser. So we have int 10 is 10. I think, where did I not put here? I think we need to have an echo also there. Okay, so we do get 10, which is an integer, and a string, which is 10. And another way to do this is actually to go and try to see if this is going to be numeric, and that will be providing us a Boolean value. And we see here Boolean is true. So we do have a Boolean of true. How about here is numeric? So this is another built-in function. And let's go back to our browser and let's see. Again, that's true. What if we say, just to explore a little bit more, and let's have echo 10. What are we going to get if we try to go and var dump this one? And let's just say 10. Just have a line break here. And let's go back to the browser. And we do get a false value. So string data type, which is 10 here, with double quotes, enclosing it, it's a Boolean value of true if we're checking if it is numeric. And if it's a integer, it is still considered as numeric. And we do get that Boolean value of true or false, and it shows us that it's true and true. And the one that we get here false are these characters that will be 10. So I hope you got the general idea on PHP strings, that the examples that I showed you here gave you some general ideas with regards to the data type integer, data type float, and or the numeric types for the PHP language.